Honor, main protagonist and playable character in our game. His initial design, made almost 1.5 years ago, varied only slightly from the figure you've seen on the concept art at the start of this video. Nevertheless, in many ways, his design laid foundation for future characters and stories created for our game. In this video, I will focus exclusively on the design process, speaking in terms of story only in places where it's relevant to the design. My reasoning behind this is, as it is in the case of our game, design and appearance often define the way the story and mechanics would go. So in a way, I want to convey development of this character the way we experienced it from the beginning to the end. We started devising Honor looks back in 2022. We wanted our protagonist to be as simple as humanly possible and easily identifiable among other characters in our game. He should also display features big enough so the player won't have problems finding him on the screen. Looking at modern 2D games, there is a pattern for creating a main character. Heads are usually the biggest part of the body, with most prominent features. Hands and legs are often covered by clothing, and overall silhouette of the character is easily readable even if entirely obscured. So following this trend, I drew him with a big triangle head and gave him a top hat to make the design more distinct. Head shapes in our game have special meaning. We envisioned social hierarchy based on the shape of one's head. The more triangular your head is, the higher on the social ladder you are. And as our main protagonist is kind of nobility, his head needs to be a perfect triangle. As I said, triangle is the highest and most desirable shape of head one can born with. Circle is the lowest, and for simplicity, everything in between is just a variation of one or another. So square head shape, even if existing in our game, counts like a variation of triangle. This rule is still valid in the current version of our game. You can clearly see he doesn't have perfectly triangular head, and that's because we thought of him as someone banished from society, and as a punishment for his deed, he got his nose cut out, so it no longer resembled triangle. Following Hollow Knight example, and clearly without much thought, I gave him black, hollowed eyes. And for the lack of any better ideas, we imagined him in jet black suit and a red tie, to underline his royal heritage. Funny thing is, his gentlemanish appearance gave a spark for initial change in storyline, and entirely changed the course of development of our game later on. As you can see on the image, I wanted to animate him kinda like a puppet on invisible string. His movements were supposed to be wide and exaggerated to the point of ridiculousness. I quickly found this approach unwieldy, and I never finished this particular animation. Later on, we made a switch with our overall art style, and Honor started to look like this. He still looked exactly the same, but now he was made with solid outline and slightly lighter colors to make him visible on darker backgrounds. This time, at last, I finished his walking and jumping animation. I also thought about adding patch to his top hat. There was a reason behind this move, and it was because we wanted to somehow indicate that his soul is trapped in a top hat, not in his body. I even tried to animate his death, in which his soul would escape, leaving the top hat and making his body dissolve to ashes. As for the idea of his soul being trapped in a top hat, I personally think it's cool. But as of right now, I am not sure about the animation itself, thus I don't know if it will make its way to the current version of our game. It was around the time when storyline and lore for our game started to develop, and as I said before, it developed based on Honor look. His broken triangle head is now the result of his brother's betrayal. His suit became inspiration for Gentleman's family, which now stands as a core of our story. Top hat I gave him for the purpose of making the design more appealing, alongside his white skull, are now core visual clues for the player to distinguish more important characters in our game. As the lore and overall development of our game progressed further, we decided there is a need to recreate Honor, to make him look better and more suitable to the actual state of the game. We established a couple of design rules to roughly guide us during the design process. Every single one of those rules are based on the history fragments, races and things that we envisioned during the last couple of months. Honor is of the one we call Travelers. We named them like this because of their initial appearance on the plain of Mossland. I will try to explain this in another video though, as it is a broad subject that deserves its own separate video. The most characteristic feature is a triangular head, as they believe triangle is the perfect form and ideal figure. Travelers are also pale of complexion and display fondness for elegant clothing. They also tend to be really tall, with unproportionately large legs. According to the second rule and to the things we established before, every traveler needs to wear a hat, thus he needed to have one. We weren't sure as to keep his cutout nose or not, but I decided to not bother with it. I am still not really sure of this, but in this design we stayed true to the version in which his brother somehow cut his nose out. Throughout this entire video, you could see my attempts at creating interesting design for Ona, experimenting, trying different approaches, and sometimes totally diverging from the rules that we established earlier. Currently, he looks like this. For the most part, we altered his figure. Now he has longer and slimmer legs, making him appear as he was taller, even though he isn't. We kept his face relatively white, darkening it only slightly to fit him better in our world, but added pupils to his overly hollow eyes to make him look more present or humane. As for his clothing, we left the top hat as it was, but changed his suit to something more vintage, deciding on Victorian coat with imitation of French cravat as a kerchief around his neck. We did cover it with our regular red tie though, but this decision might change in the future. We experimented a little with colors, but ultimately didn't thought about anything better than we already had, so we left them be. The most important change of all is deletion of his hands from the design. We decided that in a large scheme of things, they are unimportant, and leaving them would only elongate animation process, so we got rid of them. After all, he wouldn't even use them, as we completely abandoned the idea of exaggerated puppet-like animation. And because there is another important character in our game who will serve as a replacement for Honor's hands. But that's a subject for another video. And that being said, I wish you a great day. Bye.